welcome to the Soft Cock Week podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Renee. As a surrogate partner and intimacy guide, many times clients approach me to fix their dick. This led me to create Soft Cock Week in 2022, an annually celebrated week of education, appreciation, and normalization of the flaccid phallus. I'm so happy you're here. Before we get started, this podcast is not a replacement for medical advice. In fact, when you notice any change in your body, especially in how your penis is functioning, please always seek medical consultation first. Now let's get started. Welcome to Soft Cock Week. I think this is like my third interview for this week. I don't know what order they're going to come out in, but welcome everyone listening. I'm Michelle Renee. I'm a surrogate partner, intimacy guide, and professional cuddler in San Diego. And today I get to talk to one of my colleagues, Kyle Hoffman. I've known Kyle for quite a few years, and he can talk maybe in his intro, like how long he's been with Cuddlist, because that's how I know him. And he was so generous to reach out and say, I want to support Soft Cock Week. What are the options? And I have like a menu of ways that my colleagues can support this. And he was so generous to say, I'll just come on and talk about my experience in my relationship to Soft Cock Week. So thank you, Kyle, for being here. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to get to spend time with you and this community. I'm Kyle Hoffman. He, his. I've been professionally, I do life and intimacy coaching and touch and cuddle therapy, and often I combine touch work with coaching together. Also lead workshops around cuddling and emotional, physical intimacy, clothing optional spaces, and I've been expanding more this year into one-on-one work, some clothing optional work, and sensual work. Professionally been doing this work for a little over 5 years, and I've been on a personal journey around my own sexuality and body for a lot longer than that. And as I was just like thinking before we came on, I was noticing that I felt some nervousness and fear, because the old tapes in my head are like, oh, if I'm public about the fact that my like cock isn't hard and ready to go all moments of the day, then like my dating life will be ruined. Like I'll never have sex again. So first, like I wanted to start there, like, wow, noticing how, at least my experience, how powerful those messages, that story is.
Yeah, even for like you volunteered to do this, right? There was a point where you're like, yeah, I'm comfortable talking about this. And then it turns into like, but what does this mean about me? Which is the exact reason why we're doing this, is like, even, we have this mutuality in working in touch. And I too, I'm coaching in that space more than I'm not coaching in that space. And I like to share with clients, like, I'm still on my journey. I don't expect me ever to be I've mastered everything and there is no more work to be done. We're all just practicing. So thank you for being vulnerable about those feelings coming up. Those are familiar feelings. I know I tackle them too. So thanks for doing it anyways. Like, it's the difference between an edge and a boundary, right? You're like stretching yourself, but you're not violating your boundaries.
I agree.
Yeah.
And um, I think part of my desire to share that people listening is that I don't think any of us, also, like I said, I don't think any of us expect people to feel totally comfortable about their penis or body parts, however it's showing up. That, because I know for me, I'm so into self-growth that sometimes I can judge myself for not being like evolved enough. Like, oh, well, I should be more comfortable with it. I should be total of no negative feelings about my penis whatsoever. So yeah, I appreciate that we're all on the journey. And I mean, if I think you feel free to guide me. And like, one story about my own experience that I like to share. And I think it's helpful. And like, it would have been lovely for me to hear it like earlier in my life. Was somewhere in my mid-20s, I had challenges at times, like having erections when having sex. I don't know exactly why it started. Definitely though, then my performance anxiety and like overly focusing on it like increased the snowball. As far as the challenge having erection, and just I feel like I really experienced the unevolved and like or not as evolved as what I'd like, and not as educated what I like, kind of our culture and even like medical system around it. Like I talked to my doctor, and I was like young 20s, very healthy. He's like, oh well, yeah, I could give you a Viagra, and the little bit that I know, I was like, wait, like I don't think that's the right way to go, and like that's like your first line of defense. So and I had researched and heard some before that. I think often and I'm not a medical professional, not medical advice, but just warnings about Viagra, um, and then actually like what really helped me was doing some talk therapy about it, and one therapist recommending that I slow down the pace I mean, so slow down how quickly I get to, especially penetrative sex, because that, especially while using condoms, was the place that most time, almost like challenges of not being erect when I wanted to, and that was super helpful. That was probably the most helpful thing I got, and it also gave me unexpected benefits of like in general. I'm like, oh wow, I really enjoyed this slowing this down more, and like I'm actually enjoying the moment more, and it's feeling more intimate than. So that was also helpful to get me off of like the goal oriented.
The PIV train, right? The penis and vagina train of like, this is what sex is, and anything else just isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can I ask you more? Like, so
Yeah.
a lot of times I get, I thank you for saying that this started in your early 20s, because I think sometimes we think that erectile disappointment is something that happens when we're older. And so when we're younger and we're having this issue, it must just be us, right? There is nobody else, because I'm not old yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah.
that, I think is an important topic to talk about. What I hear you say is that you correct me if I'm wrong, that with condom use, you would lose your erection, or that knowing you needed to use a condom, like it broke the chain of energy. Like, how would you describe how that was coming up back then, or not coming up back then? There's so many puns in this
Love it.
week.
Can't wait. This is gonna be so good. Let's see. So like I think my biggest challenge at that time, and even like I'm learning as we go, and even I'm like conscious of the word like challenge. Is that really the right word? But anyways, the thing that felt like a challenge at the time was um, me being erect enough to have penetrative sex to start, and then to keep going, like my penis not getting too soft, or staying hard enough such that like a condom would stay on. So I think there was a number of reasons why penetrative sex I had more challenges staying erect. One, it was more obvious. Well, I felt like for me it was more of a big deal if I got soft, because then okay, maybe we'd have to stop, or have to like, or condom would maybe have to do a new condom. Whereas if I was, let's say, like receiving oral sex or pleasure from hands, I feel a lot more comfortable with my erection or say my penis like flowing. because I feel like it wasn't as much of a break in the thing. It just then I was worrying more, of course, worrying more about the penetrative sex, worrying about am I going to stay hard. Didn't, just not as much pleasurable stimulation because of that physical barrier in between. I'm not a huge proponent of condoms, but that was just part of it for me. Yeah, so I think that those are the main reasons, and that little bit of time of like, okay, now I'm pausing to put on the condom, and and then the worry of is my erection going to go down in that little break, or while I'm like changing my brain from kind of being more emotional to like
Yeah.
practical.
Well, I love that you got the recommendation to slow down. How do you feel about pausing real quick to be like, okay, and now here's a tip from a pro. Like if I was better at editing, I would be like, I would pause this and I would come in with like, okay, and here's some workarounds here, just in case this is a situation for you at home. What comes to mind is a couple things. One, I often tell clients to start masturbating with a condom on as a way to like desensitize to that having a condom on and the difference of it, right? It just because it is a different sensation. That's one tip that I give people. The other one is try using internal condoms on your partner so that you're not having to actually put a condom on. The internal condom could be placed inside the vagina before sex even started. Right. So there's some workarounds. If that is the thing that's holding or hanging up the person at home listening to this, those might be two really wonderful things to try. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But ultimately, I love the overall theme of slowing down and getting away from that hard penis focused or centered version of intimacy.
Yeah.
Sexual intimacy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah. Please jump in at anytime. And at some point, I definitely remember masturbating with a condom. I don't remember who told me that or when, but yeah, I feel like that was definitely helpful for me, for both the sensation as well as the confidence of, or I mean, the experience and the confidence of, I can masturbate for a while and stay erect for a while, because I think mainly the thing occurring for me with a partner was fear. I mean, it was like performance anxiety, fear of judgment, fear of, if I don't perform this way, will she call me back, whatever.
And that's a surefire way to have erectile issues, right? Like, and then when you get into that loop and all you're thinking about is fixing the erection, you're not going to fix the erection. It's like you have to let go of the erection so that it can even come back. It's like that weird relationship excuse, like set it free. Like set it free, and if it returns, it was meant to be, right? It's like set the erection free, and if it returns, great. And if it doesn't, and this is okay, as a surrogate partner, probably the number one when working with cis men is like, fix my dick. Why do I have these ED issues? And I don't have a magic wand. And it's so hard when they first start the work for them to hear me say this. I say it. I don't think they listen to me. I think they just, yeah. I can't, I have no magic cure for your erectile issues, right? It might be that slowing down helps. It might be that building safety in the relationship, which is also part of the slowing down, I think. Slowing down the whole relationship, not just when we're in physical contact with each other. But that might be the thing that fixes it. But what if we got away from the idea of fixing it, right? And just being in connection with another person, however our bodies are showing up. Because you might have an issue with your erection, but your partner, especially if you're in a heterosexual relationship, might also be having a similar issue, but you can't see it the same way. Right? So how would we like to connect right now? What would feel good to me right now? And it doesn't have to be even anything sexual. There are so many other ways to connect and build intimacy. So my soapbox. So Kyle, going back to your story. So
Mhm.
you took the advice and you slowed things down. What happened next? Bring
Yeah,
us
and
back.
this, well, like I
I'm
said,
just gonna stay
Michelle,
here and listen.
Michelle, I feel like this, I might look back and being like, oh, this was the moment where like I stepped even more in my career, like more even like more specifically or majority focused on sexuality because this is just so much fun for me. So thank you, loving it.
I'm happy to do this with you.
Yeah. Well, one, I wanted to specify that for me, slowing it down meant instead of having this old track of like, oh, if we're going to be sexual, the first time that we're sexual, it has to go to penis and vagina sex and orgasm. Yeah. To oh, maybe the first time we'll make out and maybe we'll have some hands touching and nothing more, or maybe you'll go to like oral and nothing more, like the first time, and maybe even two or three or four dates or times that we're sexual together. And that was so amazing for me because it built more emotional closeness. And I don't even know if I knew this back then, but I've really been noticing that I'd say more and more I'm demisexual and like sapiosexual. So emotional connection is really important for my sexual turn on, intellectual connection really. So yeah, feeling that with someone. Um, so that really helped the turn on for me be stronger and my penis more erect when I wanted to. And we were also getting closer and I was feeling more secure in the relationship. So I didn't have as much of a worry of, oh, if this doesn't go how I hope this time, like our relationship, our dating is going to end. So those were all, yeah, really helpful for me. And I still notice this, that um, I get so much more comfortable over time when with a new partner. The first time, the second, third, fourth, fifth, like yeah, I mean, in so many ways, and that allowed, I think, my body to just be more in my sensation, more in the moment, and at times it means like being erect versus having my energy and focus
Yeah.
in my head.
Where is your thoughts at, right? I'm working with a client around the same issue right now. And, if all we're thinking about is what's happening with our penis, how are we even enjoying this other person in the space with you? Right? Like it's like meditation.
Mhm.
Your thoughts drift. Maybe his thoughts drift back to what's happening with his erection or not having an erection. And be like, nope, just bring it back. Can I follow? Where is my body in contact with Michelle's body? Right? Can I pinpoint where are her fingertips? Like, and that's how I kind of direct him back like a meditation practice. It's not bad that you thought about your penis, but let's just bring it back to the present and what's happening right now in your body and not think about what's happening specifically with the erection. Maybe it's thinking about what does this touch feel like for Michelle on my penis or some other part of my body rather than how it's responding.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
There's so much
So.
education that we're missing, right? A lot of what I think about this is like if we just had more robust sex education to say, like, not using porn as our education because porn sex isn't real sex.
Mm.
Like it's like a podcast, right? We can edit, do all these things. Kyle and I might have a part of this conversation that later we decide we don't want to show, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing with porn, right? We might have areas we don't want to show, or the porn isn't showing, what it takes to get ready to be in a place to have sex. I didn't know about responsive versus spontaneous desire until after my first marriage ended, and to kind of catch everyone up. I mean, if you learn something new, Kyle, that's cool. But in the book Come As You Are, everyone should read it, whether you're a vulva owner or not, because I think it's written directed towards women, but it's the message is still the same. And I think men are really losing out on this. You guys need to understand, everybody needs to understand that we don't all get hit with a lightning bolt of sexual desire. Right. And I think men are so used to, or penis owners are so used to, oh, my dick is hard, I should go fuck something. Right. It's time for the sex. My dick is hard. And if you are not a spontaneous desire person, or it has changed, and sometimes that changes because we're in a new phase in our relationship, right? It's not bad. It's just different. Right. So to know like that you might not be a spontaneous desire, and that it's a responsive desire, which means I have to be aroused before sexual desire shows up. And you might go, how does that work? Right? It's like you've got to have that owner's manual to how sex works for you. And so for me, I have brakes and accelerators. Like, you press the gas pedal or you press the brake. And if you are pressing the brake while pressing the gas, you're still not going to go anywhere, right? So for me, one of my accelerators is hearing my partner's sounds. I love moans, sighs, all that stuff, very audible. I don't even need a picture. Just hear some stuff in my ear. That's my accelerator. My brake, which can be so self-imposed if I'm not careful, is expectations of having sex. Right? So if either my partner is expecting sex or I'm expecting sex, shuts me down. Right? So I have to like play a little like, mental gymnastics with myself and say, we're not going to go have sex. We're going to go be together, connect, probably get naked and cuddle and talk, fill my connection bucket, right? And then as we're in just like, just casual contact with each other, things start to, the thoughts start to change. If I touch something that I know, and I know how to do this, I know there's certain things I can do that elicit a certain response from my partner, which then gets me aroused. And then the sexual desire can come online, and then we're off to the races, right? But if you don't know that because you haven't had that education, I thought I was broken. When I was married, it was, why don't you want sex? And I just thought, I'm just broken. And then I read Come As You Are, and I cried because I'm not broken, right? I just need to know how I work, and we all work differently. Right? So Kyle, have you figured out what some of your brakes and accelerators are? And not from a place of to get to PIV sex, not to get to a place to be hard enough, right? And you can have PIV sex without being as hard as if you were wanting to have like anal sex. That requires a very, very rigid cock, right? The entrance the entrance is very different for those two locations, right? So have you figured out your brakes and accelerators?
Well, one, I think that it's new terminology for me. So one, I love that. And I was really relating to you that for me, I think like expectation is I guess like a double-edged sword or two-sided coin. Sometimes for me, it can really turn me off. Or just feels like yucky or weird, or I don't know.
Pressure.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yep, perfect. Pressure, and then it starts like, oh well, what if I'm not aroused or etc. And also expectation can be incredibly sexy and hot, like not with photos, but like texting about sex, things like that beforehand.
The build up, right?
Yep.
It's like, where's the line between build up and expectation, right? And I think it comes down to, sorry, I don't want to derail this, but I think this is where our work comes into play here. I think it comes down to, am I safe with this partner to say no if I change my mind.
Yep.
Right. And that's what that is like the key for me, is that I have a super wonderfully comfortable relationship where I can do that and not have any negative feelings about it coming from my partner.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We all probably, I mean, yeah, it's, if you're really revved up and your partner can't meet you there, we have options of other things to do. Right. But like nothing feels worse than a partner that mopes. And can't come in with a thank you for taking care of yourself. Right. I want my no to be, maybe celebrated is a strong word, but really I want it to be celebrated.
Ideally, yeah.
Right. That I'm taking care of myself, and that my partner knows that I'm not putting myself in something that I don't want to be in, because it will not feel the same. And honestly, it will hurt the future. It will hurt the future. You will not be able to show up. It reminds me of, you might have heard this back in Cuddleist training back in the day, because I remember Madeline Guinazzo telling the story a lot, but some study about kids in a playground and how when they have, and this came up on another episode that I recorded the other day, when they have a good fence line, they actually get farther away from the teacher or the person holding the space. They can take more chances because they know there's a container, right? And I think of the yes and the no as that container of, I can take the risk of saying, yeah, I want to connect with you. Because if I didn't have the ability to say no, I might not be willing to even take the risk of jumping into bed with you and building that connection with you.
Yeah.
I might just go, I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the mood.
Yeah. Or whatever, I'm busy or whatever it is. It's, yeah. And you, well, I don't want to speak for you. I'll speak for myself, but like, and I may actually like not be in the mood because I'm like, because that fear or concern of person having expectations for me, is a turnoff. And I think you're speaking to it so well, that difference for me. I want me and my partner to be able to fully express ourselves in the moment. This feels edgy for me. It sounds like on here I can talk about like specific.
You can talk about whatever you want. Yeah, cool. For sure.
Yeah. So it was like very recently. I was gonna be meeting with a dating and said something like, let's say it was this year. Said like, may have been dreaming of like face fucking you this morning, something like that. And that's so hot for both of us. And it's like expressing the moment, and when it works for me is when we both know that doesn't mean it actually has to happen tonight or ever. Like we may both have hopes for that. Yeah. So that's, I appreciate the conversation that helped me become more clear about what the difference is, like maybe expectations versus desire and hope in the moment.
Yeah. The idea is really hot of face fucking you, right? And cool if all the stars align and you want me to face fuck you and I have the cock to face fuck you, right? And sometimes those things never have to come into fruition, right? Just because it's a fantasy does not mean it has to be reality. I have lots of fantasies that if I want to do something, I am resourced enough that I have always been able to make that bucket list happen. I live a very privileged life. And there are still things that are on the list of that's really hot to think about, but I'm not interested enough to make it happen, unless it shows up in the moment.
Yeah.
I spit on someone the other day. Didn't know I wanted to do that, right?
Cool.
But I probably won't find me sending a text message saying, oh, I really want to spit on you. Maybe, who knows? We all evolve.
Yeah, we certainly do. We certainly do. Well, if you want, I could go back to I think you had asked me kind of like, how did the story continue? Do you want me to go there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please. Yeah. So I love little rabbit trails, like, or what do you call them? Little, rabbit holes. Yeah.
Well, for this podcast, we'll call it rabbit holes.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was really those changes were really effective for me. I think maybe I'll say is it went really overall went really well with my partners, like slowing it down. Um, generally just positive response. I think I had some fear at the at that time of like, oh, will they just be disappointed that I don't want to have PIV sex or something at this time? But it was just really, really enjoyable. And I remember, yeah, I mean, a positive experience was this woman said, "Oh, actually, I think that was really good for me to have pleasure and then have an orgasm that didn't involve intercourse." She's like, because that's such my go-to, so that was positive for her. Mm, and and then as I had some experiences where this went well, and then the first time that I was having PIV sex with new partners, I was mostly erect how I wanted. Then my confidence increased again, or predictions, and the performance anxiety decreased, and it'll still show up a little bit, but that mostly yeah, I'm so conscious of at first my first words can be like solve the issue, but at the same time it's not.
Right.
But I think what I'm saying. That's what changed it for me. It's what changed things for me.
Yeah. That's the thing. There's going to be people listening to this podcast that have some kind of diagnosis that says this erectile issue is permanent
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. And to them, I want to say the message is you can still have sex,
Yeah.
right? You can still have pleasure. You can still have orgasms. You can still masturbate. You can still do all the things. They're just going to be different. For the people that are just dealing with some anxiety, performance anxiety, the whole like it happens once and then we just ruminate on that and like we're killing our boners that way. Like broadening the scope of what does sex mean to you can really keep you in play, in like even going as far as saying your erection is not allowed here. What does that do? Sometimes that's the thing that really kicks it in, and maybe it's not, right? But there's so many ways to have sex, and we just haven't been taught about all these things. I keep bringing up something I heard on a podcast with Joe Court and Barry McCarthy. Joe Court is a therapist in Detroit, and actually he's going to end up on one of our episodes for Soft Cock Week. And he was interviewing Barry McCarthy, who's written really great books, but two in particular that I have on my bookshelf, one for erectile dysfunction and one for premature ejaculation. And so Barry was talking about, in a lot of heterosexual relationships, the sex stops because the man stops initiating because he doesn't have reliable erections. And it goes back to that learning about responsive desire, and expanding the education. And yeah, it's different. They're not, men's erections have been known to be easy. I don't know if they're really easy, because I think that a lot of people get enough of an erection, they move into intercourse or something like that when they're not actually fully aroused. Like, just because your dick is hard doesn't mean that you're ready to move forward. You could have more pleasure, you could have more sensation maybe if you waited a little bit and built up a little bit. Like there's lots of, you could dial this in and tweak and do all the things, right? But ultimately, if you're thinking the only way you can have sex is with an erection, then I really challenge you to reevaluate, what does sex mean? Is it just about getting to ejaculate? Is it about connecting with your partner? Right? And like asking those questions, what would feel good to you right now? I just always think of like the sexy version of the 3-minute game, right? Where you put it all on the table. It's like, how would you like me to touch you for 3 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever your parameters are, right? And just getting to direct exactly what would feel good to you right now.
Yeah.
Or how I want to touch you for 10 minutes in a way that would feel good to me. Like so often. So big surprise that a lot of people come to me with erectile issues, right? And I have this one client who is so lovely with his words, and he's always sending me feedback stuff. And he always celebrates the way that I normalized having a soft penis like in my presence, that I'm still very excited to be with him. And there's something really wonderful for me, very joyous about playing with a soft cock. That can be a really reparative process for people. So like for couples listening to this, if the partner could get really enthusiastic about how fun it is to pet them, right? To, you know, a blowjob with a soft penis is so much easier.
Maybe for
I have
some could probably
TMJ.
go longer.
My jaw has a problem. And also I don't think of oral sex as something that has to go to orgasm. Right? That's another thing that's an interesting breaking down what we think is supposed to happen. I remember this is a pretty personal story, but I used to wake my partner up with a blowjob every morning, and he didn't really appreciate it. And when I was telling this story to my ex-husband, and my ex-husband goes, he doesn't appreciate it. And I go, no, he just, he doesn't seem to appreciate it enough. But I go, I only do it for a couple minutes. It's just really to wake him up and start his day on a happy note. He goes, you don't make him come? And I'm like, oh, I'm not putting that much work into it. This is just like almost like kissing you good morning. Like, can we start to have little micro interactions like that? If you have to take, I mean, that's why it has the name job on it, right? Like if it has to become this thing that has to go to a certain point or you're not done, like play, be playful. Stop when you feel done, right? Do it until it feels good. I remember working with a client and he's like, you should give classes on hand jobs. And I was like, I'm not doing anything other than being present and really enjoying what I'm doing. Right? It's like I'm doing it for me, not for you. And if people start to pull those things apart, again, back to like the wheel of consent, and I'll put in the show notes, like go read The Art of Receiving and Giving, The Wheel of Consent by Betty Martin, and start to really look at who is this for. Play with that with a soft penis, and I think the world could really expand for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. And I realize as we're talking that, and I want to own that those initial words of like, oh, that like solved the issue for me, like that was still like coming from my old paradigm, an old teaching of this is the goal or whatever. So I definitely want to keep what I shared, because we're humanists, and say what feels more accurate and better for me is really just changing those things, changed my experience with my body, and made sex and connection more enjoyable in many ways, and in many ways. And actually I think the biggest ones were the more slowing it down and being in the intimacy and in the moment, and savoring more savoring, and the words are like stewing in. It's not too super sexy, but in those new experiences, like, oh, really soaking in this experience of the first time that we're kissing versus like, okay, like we went through that for like 10-15 minutes and like now on to the next new thing.
Do you ever have a conversation with new partners around how you show up? Like, do you ever give like I don't want to use the word warning, because again, it goes back to that, like, this is a negative thing. But you're somebody who is very communicative, and I don't know if that translates into, sexual situations. But for me, I know that, especially as a pro in this world, I kind of give the rundown. I kind of educate, do a little bit of education as we're about to play together for the first time, of like, hey, these are things that are like, again, if there's an expectation, that's a turnoff for me. I really love hearing sounds. That's a big turn on for me. It's kind of like part of the elevator speech of, safer sex kind of stuff. Do you ever wonder, because you do run into this every once in a while, are you ever like ready to pad the experience with like a, hey, just so you know, I'm super into you. And if my erection doesn't show up the way that we might think it would, it's not because I'm not into you. Right? Because I think a lot of people internalize that.
Yeah, that's a good point and a great question. I don't think I have in recent years. I may have said that more in the past, like when just my experience, my erections were different. Yeah, and what it does, what this does remind me of was like one like longer term partner I was with while I was having some erection disappointment, and even at that point, I feel like I'd evolved. I feel like I was significantly more comfortable with it, and yeah, she wasn't. She had, and it brought up her stuff of like am I not sexy enough, or am I doing something wrong, or da da da, and I was like, no, it's all good, and also actually like I understand, but you like worrying about her getting upset or angry or whatever, like that's actually just gonna like that's gonna, yeah, gonna really decrease arousal and safety and erection. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I remember when I first started dating after my divorce, I spent the first year just well, maybe not quite a year, but close to a year, um, quote unquote dating. I'm just going to say fucking, because I was not really dating. I was just kind of trying the buffet that was I got married when I was 20, 21 to my high school sweetheart. Hadn't had a lot of experience. I mean, there was some stuff inside the relationship, whether it be, three ways and things like that. I was a cheater. Old Michelle 1.0, didn't know how to, how do I word this? Did not have the toolbox to either extricate myself from that relationship or to actually work on the problems in that relationship. So, full disclosure, in case my ex-husband's listening to this, because he hates when I don't declare that I was a cheater. Anyways, I didn't have a lot of experience. I didn't have my 20s of sowing my oats, as they say. Like, I didn't have that. So I did spend a lot of time kind of trying things out. And I know for myself that I had to like check myself that this was not about me. And that's really freeing. And it's still a practice. It goes back to that whole, just because we're pros doesn't mean that we've conquered all these things. They still show up sometimes. Like, oh my gosh, do I work on body confidence and, sexual confidence and these things? And I'll tell you, I was with a play partner the other day, and the words that crossed my head or my mind, do I deserve this? And I said those out loud I need to get them out of my head and have it shut down. Like, of course you deserve this, right? Like, we're not 100% spot on. We're still human beings.
Yeah.
With history that creeps up once in a while, right? Which reminds me, I made myself a note from earlier when we were talking. I imagine part of that, like, old kind of stuff that comes up for you is like, as a coach, you haven't fixed your dick, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like to say that if I help a woman figure out why she hasn't been orgasming or why she's never orgasmed, that I never experienced that myself. you know, like there's still times, and I can tell you when it happens. If I have betrayed my yes and my no,
Sure.
if I have let a sexual encounter go farther than what I really wanted it to go because I want my partner to have a good time or
Sure.
whatever, it will shut me down for a couple of days. My body is like,
Mm,
whoa, bitch, you did that thing you used to do, right? You did that thing that you used to do that was really fucked
mm,
up and traumatic for your body, right? Because coercion, if you are being pressured into having sex, whether it's you're pressuring yourself, your partner's pressuring you, society is pressuring you, it lands in your body as if it was an assault.
mm,
Even though we don't think of it as quite the same thing, our bodies are like, whoa, what are you doing? Right. And so for me, the minute I do that, it's like it becomes really difficult, almost like I lose my orgasm. You know, so again, learning to really be authentic in how you're showing up and um, making sure that yes and no
yeah.
exist and that you honor it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
We always go back to that. I feel like everywhere in our type of work, whether we're working in platonic spaces or in sensual or erotic spaces, it's that same skill set. And how do you do it in an erotic space if you haven't mastered it in the platonic
mhm.
space?
Yeah. Yeah. So appreciate you, Michelle, and authenticity. It's reminding me of, I mean, I'm going to paraphrase a quote of something um, um, like spend time with those who are seeking the truth and run from those who claim they've found it.
The
Something like
gurus.
that. Yeah. Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
the chills of my body. It's a powerful quote for me. Um, yeah. And I mean, I'll relate that. Um, yeah. This year where I was with his first time sexual new partner, and I, yeah, and I was going faster, like, as far as in terms of sexual intimacy than what I would have chose my mom myself. Partly was hot because she was so into it, and partly though was definitely, oh, I don't want to disappoint her or want to call back, that kind of stuff. And then I did notice when we were gonna have penis and vagina sex, that I did notice some fear of mine, some of the old thoughts of like, oh, am I gonna be hard enough or da da da, like so yeah, so that's a great point of how when when I don't honor myself or not as authentic, then yeah, the older stuff or just my body is responds. As we were talking earlier, I wanted to say that I I now I now look back on a lot of the sex that I had in like my 20s, and for reference, in 2023, I'm 37, and I'm like, did I like how much of that did I actually enjoy? Like how much of that was I like actually really present and like enjoying and soaking it in? And because a lot of it was the what was having the goal focused, and it's like partly it was a goal for me, but partly it was like, oh, I need to do this, I should do this to be a man, to satisfy my partner. It just was like so less present. So and in our conversation, I'm thinking about how I think that's a great example of the erection or having an orgasm during sex, where like that doesn't make it good, because like there were times where I did both of those things and I didn't enjoy that much. It wasn't like maybe it looked good from a camera or whatever, but I wasn't emotionally or mentally enjoying it that much, my body that much, because I was so focused on the task. I'm wanting to find a little better words to describe it, but hopefully I'm communicating
Yeah.
it.
I was workshopping sex. That's what I would call it. I was workshopping sex. And it's worked out. I mean, it really helps me in what I do now because I can relate to a lot of different circumstances and situations where I'm like, oh, yeah, when I have a hard time getting out of my head enough, one of my little tricks up my sleeve back in the day was 69ing. That when you have a job to do, I could take the focus off of me and not even not think about me so much enough that I could concentrate on the pleasure and not be in my head about what I'm doing or how I look or like all the critiques that you kind of go through sometimes when you're not able to be present. And then and as I got better at being more confident in those spaces, then I was able to not rely on 69. It's still one of my favorite things. And I know it's a controversial one. It's one of those things people either hate it or they love it. It's like the word moist. They can't stand it, or it doesn't matter. Like it's a very I love going on FetLife and you'll see somebody be like, I'll die on this hill, but 69ing is the best or the worst or whatever. And you'll just, tons of comments. That's how you can really get engagement. That'll be the poll that I'll put with this on Spotify where they let you ask questions. I'll be like, 69ing, is it a good thing or a bad thing? But I take that into my work now where I'm just like, oh yeah, well, this is a way to do it. But ultimately, maybe you want to get here. I don't know what everybody's sexual journey looks like or where they want to get to because you don't know what you don't know. But I was definitely workshopping sex back then. And now I think sex is very spiritual for me. It's better, like you said, like it gets better when you know the person more. Like, so for me, sex is just, yeah, everything in my relationship has gotten better the longer we've been together, which is not what I expected. I mean, I expect things to kind of peak and then level out, but like things are great on that side of things. And it's interesting being in an open relationship, technically an open relationship. I don't really crave connection with other people because I need such depth. Like you say, demisexual, like it has to be really intriguing for me to like, I must have a really good connection with the person to want to expand the connection. It's not just about going in to do the sex thing. It's just about we're friends and we have this lovely connection. What would it be like to expand the connection? And it's definitely coming from a place of abundance rather than scarcity of like, I don't need the buffet of all the sexual partners anymore. Like I'd rather have like the richness of one with depth than maybe the number of experiences doesn't matter as much to me anymore.
Sure. Yeah. I really.
Everybody's different.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to many things you're sharing, and I did remember to your question of, do I give people a heads up about some myself sexually or things? These days, sometimes I will say to someone that, oh, I'm finding I'm more like demisexual, so yeah, so one, I might like to take it slower than some people, or especially if I'm noticing that maybe they want to move to sex or like something sexual like quicker than I do, like then I'll say that. And something's been super fun is I don't remember if it's new or a reemergence. Like I've really been getting into teasing lately and this year, and so that feels like that just like hits the nail on the head for me, because then I'm, I think, in a very sexy and like more culturally accepted way, and a more normalized way, I'm getting to slow down or like choose the pace. And then there's that desire, and then seeing their desire build increases my desire. So those are some things that I will, yeah, talk about. And I'm just kind of repeating, but I feel like especially the talking about it in terms of teasing has felt really good for me, because I think it's I mean, it's more palatable for the other, for my
Mm-hmm.
partner, because teasing, I think it's associated with, oh, I'm still attracted to you, I'm interested in you, and I'm just wanting to build the tension, anticipation. Whereas,
Stoke the
yeah, stoke
fire.
the fire. Whereas if I like sit down and get academic, well, like I'm sapiosexual, and like, or and I think those are great words. And even for me, as I speak them, I just feel kind of like it just kind of decreases the sexual desire or tension or something. So I think it gets me a little more intellectual and out of my body.
It reminds me of power play,
Yeah.
right? Power dynamics. So you could either have the dynamic of like dominant. I'm going to talk in heterosexual mononormative speak for a
Sure.
second. People at home can adjust this to whatever your orientation and whatnot. But in like a heterosexual relationship, having like the dominant female with the you're not allowed to get an erection play is fun, right? And then the flip side of that would be like a dominant male saying, I'm just going to tease and deny you. Because what happens there is when it maybe it goes the way of the erection, you can then be like, okay, and now we can do the thing. Or I do that with clients a lot of like, no, we're just going to play and like we're in high school, right? And we can make out and I'm going to like make you make all these fun noises because you're squirmy, like your body isn't used to having this kind of touch. And so we got to kind of desensitize you a little bit. Maybe just having my mouth right here in your neck is enough to make your like you become oversensitive to it. Like you got to be able to regulate that a little bit. So putting limits there, like the tease, putting a limit there, my hope for this client that I'm thinking of specifically is that eventually in that play of taking all of that off the table, there will be a point where his erection is showing up consistently so that we can expand that and it won't be such a surprise that either a surprise that the erection is there or a surprise that it's not, right? It'll just be kind of like, oh, today we get to change the rule, right? And you get to utilize your erection that showed up. But that's with a goal in mind of getting the erection back, right? But if the erection's not going to come back, I just think that tease and denial is so much fun. And then once in a while you go farther. Is just like I love walking out of a space and being, I am so hot right now. Like, what a great way to start the day, or, take that home for masturbation or whatever that is. Like, get up, like, squeeze all the juice out of that you can. Cause, like, it was fun in high school, at least for me. I know everybody's experience was very different. But, like, I love that just getting hot and bothered and not having to take it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. One, I noticed that like just as you're talking, and I think of like something else that we haven't talked. So I'm guessing it's fine. I just jump all over the place. Yeah, feel free to
Yes,
guide me.
please.
I'll say another part of my journey has been both at times when I've had erection disappointment or just different experiences there, or maybe not lasting as long, having sex is what I want. And when I start to talk to my guy friends, which my friends who are men, who I am very, very fortunate to have, friendships I believe are, um, compared to the norm, a lot like deeper, a lot more like open and vulnerable, and all those things. How much more common these things are than I predict. I'm like, this like guy that for whatever reason, I had this story in my head, like, oh, he wouldn't have that. He's like, oh yeah, I had this at this time, and this has helped me. And so that was something that's been really helpful for me, is talking to people and being reminded that, like you were sharing, it's so much more. All these diversity of human experience is so much more common than what we often predict it is. It's just that our culture and many of us are afraid to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, who wants to be the first one to
Right.
speak up, right? But once you do, if you do take that chance, that's when you find out that it's really common, that you're not alone. Right. And so somebody has to start that conversation. And that's what, another part of, Soft Cock Week, hopefully, it might start as a joke. Right. I think a lot of people think Soft Cock Week, like, oh, but if it starts some conversations, then we're farther along than we were before we started. We have some events with this week. By the time this comes out, it will be too late to join. The first event is the soft launch, or soft opening. It's a live town hall situation, but it is to create space for people to talk about their experiences. But I really want people to take that back to their communities. Men struggle with depth of relationship. Women talk about this stuff a lot easier, maybe not always from a place of education, unfortunately. But they at least talk about it. Hopefully they have that one sex geek friend in their group that can point them to good, accurate information. But, start the conversation and then just get really curious, because we live in the internet age. You could pop online and maybe you're not always going to find the best advice. Find some good resources for good sex advice. And maybe I'll throw some in the show notes for this, but we gotta do something. Having you be 20 something years old and your doctor saying you could always try Viagra, like, you can, and there are risks to it. It reminds me, I have a friend, maybe I should see if he wants to come on to talk about, he had a stroke after using Viagra. So, like, it's not without risk.
And one of my biggest things was like, it was like the only thing. It was the only thing that he mentioned. It wasn't, here's 4 things and try these other 3 first. It was.
Yeah. But good for you for going to your doctor, because that's the thing that I want to really emphasize this week, is that go get a medical checkup first. You could have an underlying health condition that really could use attention. It's not to be ignored. A person that helps me with this week, her personal story is losing a partner because they didn't catch undiagnosed diabetes. And they could have, with the erection issue, found more information. So we don't want to ever minimize this to say erectile disappointment isn't a big deal. It doesn't need to be beyond making sure you're still healthy. Yeah. That feels somber. That feels like and that feels really, but it's reality, and it's important. Yeah. And the same thing with like the risk of medications, right? There always a risk with medications. I don't know of any medication on the market that doesn't have some kind of risk profile. And we have to decide what risk are we willing to take, educated risk, right? There's no such thing as safe sex. There's safer sex, right? There's no such thing as taking medication and not having some kind of risk involved. There are lots of ways to decide to engage with your penis, right? You can go the method of medication. You can go the method of implants. You can go all these different ways. I support all of those. Do them with education, and know that an erection is not necessary to have really great partnered sex.
Yeah, 200%, Michelle. It reminds me of an experience I had this year, and I think it's interesting. At first, I was gonna say it was like brand new for me, but it's almost like it was a little bit different. But it's like now it kind of reminds me maybe a little bit of like high school experience. And it was a new partner, and we were cuddling and having like more clear erotic energy for the first time. And I said to her, I'm really enjoying connecting with you, and it doesn't feel right to kiss you tonight. And we'd already been on a few dates. And she's like, yeah, I agree. So the whole night I like caressed, and there was like teasing, and the tension was just like, You could just cut it with a knife, and it was for both of us incredible experience, incredibly enjoyable. So much like so interesting, so much more memorable than probably like 95% of my penis and vagina to orgasm sex experiences. Um, uh, yeah, and it was just incredible for both, and yeah, and yeah, so yeah, we both said it was a really
No,
amazing experience.
my colleague Brian Gibney and I, we go way back. And when I moved to Baltimore from San Diego, I had my first surrogate partner client, and Brian had agreed to mentor me. And I was quickly realizing that my training just wasn't really sufficient. And I was like, shit, shit, shit. I don't know what to do. You know, a lot of it was online. It was, I don't think her training is always online, but it was like post Sesta Fosta. There was just a lot of weirdness around our
Mm-hmm.
industries. And I had met Brian, and he was like, I'd be happy to mentor you. And I'd moved to the mid-Atlantic, and Brian is in the mid-Atlantic. And so I get this new client, and I panic, and I'm like, I don't know how to do Sensate Focus. Like, I've watched the videos, but I realized I wanted a baseline of how it should feel. Like, what is the goal in this exercise? Like, what should I feel in my body if it's going well? Right. So to do that, you don't do that with a client who doesn't know what they're doing to get that baseline. So thankfully, he was only a 3-hour drive away. And so I hopped in the car, went to him, and he gave me the most amazing hand caress. It was hot as fuck. And it was like just the quality of touch and the energy with it was so delicious. And I have this running joke with him is that we had sex that day. Like, if you expand your definition of sex, right? That was sex. And we joke about it between us. And we reunited. We don't see each other in person very often. And we reunited to go to New York last summer for an interview. And so we're sitting in this coffee shop in New York City. And we're like, you want to recreate the first time we had sex? We've never actually ever had sex. And so he did the hand caress to get on me in the coffee shop, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And all like my brain goes to, if he touches my hand that way, I wonder what the rest of his touch is like. And we are never going to go down that road together. But it's just fun to even know that thought is there, that fantasy is there. That's enough. Like, it's a fun little flirtation that is stuck in my head. And it's like that same, like, oh, sensual touch, or like energetic orgasms. Like, I know this is like way out of most people's like, what is that? Like, I have had people in my life that I have to have a lot of connection with them to really go to get to that place. But to be able to like not even have like direct genital contact, but have just like orgasms running through your body is like freaking amazing. Would highly recommend, and also warn people about it, because to me it's incredibly bonding. And I would have to go back to my partner and be like, yeah, that fucks with my head. You need to reclaim this, because that's incredibly connective for me. So yeah.
Yeah, something awesome is related to some of what you have been sharing, and I've learned on my journey that with the people who I want to be partnered with, they're like a good fit for me. That often me sharing about like my just authentic experience with the erections disappointment, or whatever it is, um, can be so bonding. It can be so vulnerable, and then creating closeness and connection and safety, and then all that leads to more enjoyable
Mm-hmm.
intimacy. And like you were saying, that so many people who are female bodied, or with male bodied, and all bodies have often have their their experiences and times where they're disappointed or they want things to be different with their bodies. So, and I know when I'm pretty certain when I was growing up and younger, I would have thought that like, oh, it was just either a me thing. It was like that only men had to worry about sexual performance or only worried about sexual performance. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all going through it. We should be kinder to ourselves. I hate to use the word should. My wish is that we were all kinder to ourselves and more compassionate towards our partners and towards ourselves, right? That that conversation is such a turn on for me. Like that's just like part of what does it look like to sexually connect is part of that is those kind of vulnerable conversations. Like intimacy, I always think of Len Daly from Cuddle Party passed. Always used to, really, really hammer down the intimacy is into me you see, right? And if you're not getting vulnerable, if you're not able to show up authentically, there's a wall, right? And letting some of that go feels so, so scary. But with an emotionally mature partner, I say that with a caveat, right? I don't want to put people in the lion's den. But if you've got a partner that you've established some trust and safety with, tiptoeing into some of that, if you're not used to doing it, can really, really improve your relationship and your connection.
Yeah, 100%. I seen it was my journey, and sharing for options for people listening are that like some things that I've found really to be helpful for myself and others are around some of these topics are finding after do the research like safe group workshops or safe spaces that are positive clothing optional, body positive, sexuality positive, and real experiential learners. So that's been really helpful for me, and to see the diversity of different bodies, including penises, and many of them are soft at most of the time. If people are ever interested, I've been doing some clothing optional male intimacy workshops that it's really powerful for guys to be focusing on connection and emotional and physical intimacy, and have boundaries where sex is not on the table in the workshop, but erotic feelings and some erotic touch is. So
that's men with men.
Yeah, some of mine lately have been. Yeah.
Okay, just want to clarify so that people know exactly like who is it for?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
This is all men and like male to male, men to men. Yep. Intimacy has been some of mine. And
are those open to trans and cis men, or
so great
do you have
question.
a specialty?
I mean, cis men, yes. Like trans men, like I say, like talk to me, have a conversation. I personally love diversity, like welcome everyone, and I know that different people in my community are at different levels of evolution, so I'd want to make sure that I'd feel like a safe space. So I'd probably have an individual conversation with someone.
Yeah, I feel you on that. It's like there's no way to make. It's one thing for us to desire safety for everyone involved, right? And and then it's like, how do we can't secure it, right? So it's really about helping manage expectations or having a good feel of your group or what have you. Yeah. And you're in Philadelphia, correct?
Yep. Thanks. Philadelphia based. And yep.
Just want to make sure. Do you do any virtual coaching or anything like that?
Do work with people remotely and travel to people sometimes, and hopefully starting this winter I'll hopefully do some those male intimacy workshops in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Hoping so.
Oh, yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah, maybe in the winter.
Do you do workshops that are for straight
I
men?
have done them in the past, haven't done them lately, and I definitely desire to at some point, yeah, for straight men and all gender workshops. I even I've been actually I was talking to
Yeah.
Anna Joy, and I think we both want to do like an all women's, like all femme workshops as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I remember you were doing men's cuddle parties too
Right.
at one point, right? And that to me, so as another cuddle party facilitator, just people listening,
Mhm.
cuddle party is a consent and communication workshop that happens to use cuddling as an opportunity to practice some of the skills that are in the initial workshop part of the event. And you never actually have to cuddle anybody at a cuddle party. What I love, so part of being a cuddle party facilitator was always that question of like, do you gender balance your workshops? At least I haven't done cuddle parties in years, but I'm assuming it's still a thing that comes up. And I think there is such an amazing opportunity for men to cuddle other men because of their relationship with, say, their father or just with other men in general, to be in a platonic space and figure out what kind of connection would feel
Mhm.
really good to them. It's such a, oh my goodness, this is not about sex. It's about learning how to connect. And there's healing in men working
Totally.
with men. There really is. No matter what your
Yeah.
orientation is, there's so much opportunity there when you get away from focusing on only cuddling with the gender that you're attracted to.
Yeah, yeah, 1,000%, Michelle. And 2017, at that time, it was only only part of my personal journey, not professional. I started being involved in a men's platonic therapeutic touch and cuddling group. You probably have seen the article that went, yeah,
It went
the article went
famous.
famous on our group. And at the time, I only identified as straight, so it was a large stretch of my comfort zone at that time. Partly because I didn't realize I had some uh, still unprocessed part of trauma from the past, and that work and those men, those times was life changing for me, like person changing. Yeah, in so many ways. So yeah, I think it's so bad.
And yay for evolving
Mhm.
sexualities, right? Like my sexuality, just in general, how I connect to sex has changed so much over the years. Orientation, certainly, what is orientation anymore in my world? I'm just like, if I like you, I like you. I don't really think about what kind of body you come in. But just like, even like really embracing this responsive desire part of me, that's part of my sexuality. Um, Recently, I've realized that I don't believe, or it's very rare that I experience sexual attraction. I have sexual desire, and the difference, people go, what's the difference? Well, the difference is the desire directed towards
Mm,
someone, or is it just a
mm,
desire, right? I am so sensually attracted
mm,
to people. I want to
mm,
touch them. I want to be close to them, right? And that eventually gets me to the
mhm,
sexual desire, but it's not about sexual attraction for me. These are all these little nuances. And like it's like it doesn't have to be one way forever. And I think as we get to know ourselves better, of course all these things change, you know? Like you said, trauma can play a big part in that too. And like it's like giving yourself permission to go, but what if that's just a
mm.
story? So yay to expansive
Yeah,
sexuality.
yeah, yay.
Yeah.
Um, is it okay if I plug my offering a bit?
Plug away.
I love it. My
I know there's so much. I'm such
my
a
brain just
pervert.
finds ways
You're
to,
such a
yeah.
pervert.
Um,
I'm like, you want to plug a plug? I really like the enjoy plugs. Those are my favorite. But anyways, I
yeah, but
digress.
also, yeah, if someone's interested to possibly serve them to explore any of these things with me, either remotely or in person, yeah, feel free to reach out. And at my website, cuddling and cuddlingcoaching.com, one word. You can also sign up to receive invites to my workshops, cuddlingandcoaching.com. And if you want to just Google me, my full name is Kyle Robert Hoffman.
Kyle, I'm so glad to know you. Thank you for having what could feel like a really vulnerable conversation. I don't know how you feel about it now. I know with your nerves coming into it, I know other people will say, wow, that you were so open. Thank you so much. That must be so difficult. I know when I hear that, I go, this is kind of just who I am. But I just want to say, if this is important. I appreciate you. I'm sure that our relationship helps make this easier because I've known you. When did you come to Cuddlist?
2018.
So we have a good chunk of history between us. Well, not a lot. Go to cuddlist.com and catch a picture of me and Kyle with axes because that's cuddly. I think it's the only time we've met in person, right? I know. I'm like, when can we get that off the website? I'm the director of training there now. I should have some clout in this. They're redoing the website, so I'm sure it'll be gone. So go to cuddlist.com quickly if you want to catch Kyle and I with axes. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you in my world. Thank you for asking to be a part of this. And I give my recommendation, like, go check out Kyle. Here's the thing. We all got to find the person that's the right fit for us for support. And it might be Kyle. Who knows? Figure out who you connect with. I think Kyle's got lots of videos out there. There's lots of ways. If this interview wasn't enough to tell you, what he's like, there's lots of videos out there. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for supporting Soft Cock Week with your list, like giving us a listen. Like, that's wonderful. Give us a review. Follow us. We're only putting out interviews during Soft Cock Week, but they'll be available all year. You can re-listen. And we'll see you again next year.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate everyone listening.
Wow, do I enjoy talking about soft cock. Thank you for listening. If you didn't catch the video version, I invite you to find us on YouTube or Spotify with video. If you found this podcast to be helpful and you feel you can give us 5 stars, I invite you to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. New episodes of the Soft Cock Week podcast only drop during the week of Soft Cock Week, so please make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of them. Lastly, give us a follow on social media and check out our resources, Soft Cock love notes, and events at softcockweek.com. Signing off from Southern California with so much love. Mwah.